The cry in the ashes the sky was black, filled with smoke, fire, and ash. The battle had ended hours ago, but the land still burned. Human engineer Marcus walked carefully through the ruins of what was once a small alien village, his boots crushed. Broken metal and cracked glass with every step. There were no sounds except the soft wind and the hiss of dying flames. He had seen war before, but this felt different. The village had not been a military base, it had been a home. There were toys scattered on the ground, cooking pots still full, and walls painted with bright colors. Now everything was destroyed, and no one had survived. At least that's what. They thought Marcus was about to turn back when he heard it, a faint sound almost impossible to hear over the wind. It was not metal breaking or fire crackling. It was a small, broken cry. He froze. Was it his mind playing tricks again? He listened carefully, holding his breath. Then he heard it again, soft, scared, and real. A child was crying without a second thought. Marcus moved towards the sound. He pushed aside fallen beams, broken furniture, and torn walls. The sound grew louder, more desperate. Finally, under a collapsed metal roof, he saw her, a small alien girl, no older than 6. Was curled up between 2 broken pipes. Her skin was blue and covered in soot. Her large, glowing red eyes were full of tears. She was shaking and holding a half-burned stuffed animal. Her body was thin, and her breathing was weak. Marcus dropped to his knees, slowly reaching out his hands. "It's okay," he whispered, his voice soft. "I'm here to help." The girl flinched at first, then opened her eyes wider. She didn't speak his language, but she didn't run either. He removed his jacket and wrapped it gently around her. She was so light, like a bundle of feathers. She didn't struggle. She just looked up at him. Confused and scared, Marcus picked her up and held her close. She rested her head against his chest. Still crying, but softer now, her tiny fingers clutched his shirt like it was the only safe thing in the world. When he returned to the base, the soldiers stared. One of them shouted, "Why did you bring that thing here?" Another said, "She could be dangerous. Leave her behind." Marcus ignored them all. "She's just a child," he said, calmly. "She needs help." "She's not one of us," a man said angrily. "Her kind attacked us." Marcus looked at the girl, then back at the man. "She didn't," he replied. "She's not the enemy." The medical officer refused to treat her. "No alien survivors," he said coldly. "Protocol." So Marcus cleaned her wounds himself. He used water, soft cloth, and steady hands. She winced but didn't cry anymore. She just watched him quietly, blinking her big, glowing eyes. At night, he gave her a warm blanket and some food. She didn't eat it first, but when he took a bite himself and smiled, she copied him. She was hungry, and she finished everything slowly. He gave her his own bed and sat beside her, making sure she wasn't cold. She didn't say a word. But when he turned off the lights, she reached out and held his hand. He stayed with her all night, sitting in silence, feeling her tiny hand in his. By morning, he gave her a name, Laura. It meant survivor in an old Earth language. From that day, Laura followed him everywhere. She didn't smile. Not yet. But she didn't cry anymore either. Marcus spoke to her every day, even though she didn't reply. He told her about the stars, the planets, and how machines worked. Sometimes she would blink twice, as if trying to understand. She listened. Always, people continued to whisper, "She's a burden. She's a risk. She's not even human." But Marcus didn't care. To him, she was more than an alien child. She was proof that innocence still lived in the ashes of war. And deep inside, a strange thought began to grow in his heart. He had saved her life. Yes, but maybe, just maybe, she was about to save his asterisk. She clings to him like family. Laura didn't speak, but she never let go of Marcus. From the moment he rescued her from the burning village, She followed him everywhere like his own shadow. If he sat, she sat beside him. If he walked, she walked close behind. If someone spoke to him loudly, she would step in front of him, her little arms raised, trying to protect him. Marcus didn't push her away. He knew trauma when he saw it, and though Laura was young, her eyes held the weight of something terrible. Every night she held his hand tightly, refusing to sleep unless he was near. Every time he left her, even for a short moment, she looked at him like he might disappear forever. Some of the soldiers laughed at this. "She's got you wrapped around her fingers, Marcus," they said. Others weren't so kind. "She's not your kid," one officer said. "She's a liability," but Marcus didn't argue. He knew what he was doing. He was teaching her safety, trust, and love, something she clearly hadn't known in a long time. He found old clothes from a supply box and cut them to fit her small frame. He cleaned her face gently each morning, combed her silver hair with his fingers, and even stitched her little stuffed toy back together. Laura didn't smile. Not yet, but her eyes began to look less afraid. One day she started drawing with crayons Marcus gave her. At first, they were just circles and squiggly lines. Then she drew a picture: two figures holding hands, standing near a house. One was tall, the other small. Marcus looked at it, then looked at her. She stared at the drawing, then at him, and gave a tiny nod. He realized it wasn't just a picture. It was them the next day. Marcus reported for his usual duties repairing comm systems and drones, but Laura stayed by his side even in the workshop. She handed him tools, watched his hands, and mimicked his movements. She even tried saying the names of some tools in English. "Ren. CH, she whispered. Marcus paused, surprised. He smiled. "Yes, that's right." She said it again, louder this time, and her lips curled slightly, her first small smile. It was like the sun had broken through clouds. For a moment, everything felt lighter, but not everyone was happy with this bond. Commanders started watching Marcus more closely. They believed he was becoming too attached to the alien child. "She's distracting you," they said. "She could be dangerous one day." Marcus returned from the medical wing to find his bunk empty. Laura was gone. Panic gripped him like ice. He searched the halls, the barracks, the training fields. No one answered his questions. Most just looked away. Then he heard the quiet sobs. They were coming from the lab wing, behind a locked glass door. Inside, Laura sat in a cold metal room. Her knees pulled to her chest. Trembling, white-coated scientists stood around her, taking notes. "She's being tested for hidden implants," someone explained. "Protocol." Marcus banged on the door. "Open it," he demanded. "She's not a machine. You don't give the orders here, engineer," a captain barked. "She's not even human, and she doesn't belong in your quarters." Marcus didn't care about ranks anymore. He stared through the glass, watching Laura press her hand against the window, tears streaming down her cheeks. His own heart cracked. How could they treat a child like this? He leaned close to the glass and placed his palm over hers. "I'm here," he whispered. "You're not alone." Hours later, after heated arguments, Marcus was allowed to take her back into one condition. She would be monitored at all times. Laura clung to him, burying her face in his chest, her small body shaking. That night, she didn't let go of him, not even while sleeping. She kept whispering one word again and again, through tired breath: "Papa, Papa." Marcus froze the first time he heard it. Then, slowly, he wrapped his arms around her. He didn't correct her. He didn't need to. In her heart, he had become her father now. The next morning, Marcus made a decision. He knew the base wasn't safe for Laura anymore. Not because of weapons or enemies, but because of people who couldn't see her for what she truly was. A child, a soul, a survivor. He packed a small bag with essentials, stashed some food, and adjusted his security access codes. He looked at Laura, who blinked at him with innocent trust. She took his hand without question. She was ready to go wherever he did as the sun began to rise over the ash-covered hills. Marcus whispered to her, "Let's go home." They want to take her away. The quiet mornings were over. Ever since Marcus took Laura from the lab, his every move was being watched. Guards at every hallway turned their heads when he passed. Officers whispered behind him, and surveillance drones flew a little lower than usual. Still, he acted calm for her sake. Laura, once silent and scared, had started to open up. She hummed when he cooked her breakfast. She touched the buttons on his tools and followed his hand with curious eyes. Sometimes she would even tug on his sleeve and point at broken machines. Marcus would laugh and let her help, handing her fake tools just to see her try. But even in those peaceful moments, he knew it couldn't last, and one cold afternoon, the storm arrived. A large hovercraft landed at the edge of the human base. It carried high-ranking officers from Central Command. Men in black uniforms with silver stripes stepped out, faces cold, voices sharp. They didn't speak to Marcus at first. They simply walked to the command center and closed the doors behind them. 2 hours later, Marcus was called in. He left Laura with a trusted friend in the workshop and walked into the meeting room. The walls were gray, the air heavy, and 5 officials sat across from him. A hologram of Laura floated above the table, slowly spinning. "You've grown attached to the subject," one of them said flatly. "She's not a subject," Marcus replied, his voice firm. "She's a child." The lead officer frowned. "She belongs to an alien race that helped attack our colony worlds. She's a survivor," Marcus said, "not a soldier. She carries unknown biology, unknown technology, and possibly hidden data," another added. "She must be transferred to the capital science labs, effective immediately." Marcus's hands curled into fists. "You can't do this," he said, trying to stay calm. "She's not a threat. She's my daughter now." A silence followed, cold and sharp. The lead officer narrowed his eyes. "She is not yours, and she never will be. We are giving you 1 night to prepare her for transfer," another said. "She will be taken tomorrow morning at sunrise." Marcus stood there for a long moment, his heart racing. Then he nodded slowly, said nothing, and left the room. But inside, something had already broken. When he returned to the workshop, Laura ran to him. She had drawn a new picture to stick figures again, this time with the sun and stars above them. She handed it to him, smiling. Marcus knelt down and hugged her tightly. Too tightly, because he knew he was running out of time. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat beside Laura as she slept peacefully under a warm blanket, her small hand wrapped around his finger. The soft sound of her breathing filled the room. His eyes were filled with pain, but his mind was clear. He looked around the room one last time, his tools, his books, the broken toys he had fixed for her. This had been their little world, but tomorrow it would be gone. His eyes stopped on a tiny photo he had printed him and Laura, smiling, her eyes glowing softly. He picked it up, then pulled out a bag and began to prepare as the clock neared midnight. He wrapped Laura in his jacket, careful not to wake her. She stirred, but didn't open her eyes. She trusted him, and that trust meant everything. He carried her through the back corridors of the base. The hallways were quiet, the guards sleepy. He nodded at one, handed him a report, and walked past. Without a word, no one suspected a thing. Outside, the night was cold, stars glittering in the sky. He reached the old supply hangar place no one used anymore. Inside, an old maintenance shuttle sat covered in dust. He had been secretly fixing it for weeks just in case. And now that just in case had arrived, he placed Laura gently in the passenger seat, covering her with blankets. She opened her eyes slowly and blinked. "Papa," she whispered, confused and sleepy. He nodded and smiled, trying to hide the fear in his eyes. "Yes, sweetheart," he said softly. "We're going on a trip." She didn't ask questions. She trusted him. And that trust broke his heart all over again as the engines roared to life. Marcus took one final look at the base behind him. Everything he had known, everything he had built. He was leaving it all behind for her, because he had made a promise to himself the day he pulled her from the ashes. He would never let her be alone again, and now? He was ready to risk everything to keep that promise. As the shuttle lifted off, the stars welcomed them. And somewhere far below, the officers realized they had just lost the one man who would never follow orders when it meant losing someone he loved. The escape begins. The stars stretched across the sky like silent watchers. Marcus gripped the shuttle's controls tightly, his heart pounding like a drum. Laura sat beside him, still wrapped in his jacket, her small hand resting on his arm. She looked up at him with sleepy eyes, but there was no fear in them. Only trust. That trust gave him strength, but it also made his chest hurt. He had betrayed his own people just to protect one alien child, but deep in his heart, he didn't feel guilty. He felt right. The shuttle rattled as it flew low through the mountain valleys. Avoiding radar, Marcus had flown military crafts before, but this old shuttle was slower, louder, and not made for stealth. Still, it was all he had. And he had modified it the best he could. Behind them, alarms had started to go off. Base control had discovered they were gone. Drones were launched into the sky, scanning the region. Soldiers were ordered to track the stolen shuttle. Marcus adjusted the course, flying under heavy tree canopies. The only light came from the stars and the soft glow of the shuttle screen. Laura stayed quiet, holding the drawing she had made earlier, the one of her and Marcus under the stars. They passed over old battlefields, broken towers, and scorched land ruins of a war that had already taken too much from both humans and aliens. Marcus hated flying so close to those dead lands, but he had no choice. It was the only way to reach the neutral zone. The neutral zone wasn't safe. It was full of wild creatures, criminals, and collapsed cities. But it was the one place neither the human authority nor the alien factions dared to enter. And in that lawless space, Marcus hoped to find a place where Laura could be free. As the shuttle flew through a narrow canyon, a red light flashed on the screen. Tracking beacon locked. The system warned. "They found us," Marcus muttered. Laura looked up, sensing something was wrong. Too fast. Drones appeared in the sky behind them, red eyes glowing like hunters in the night. Marcus gritted his teeth and pushed the throttle. The shuttle roared, climbing higher into the sky. But the drones were faster. They fired warning shots, small sparks exploding near the wings. "Hold on," Marcus said, pulling Laura close and diving the shuttle sharply down. The shuttle scraped past canyon walls, sparks flying from its side. Laura gasped, but didn't scream. She trusted him too much to be afraid. Marcus opened a side panel and activated the countermeasures he had installed. A cloud of chaff and smoke burst behind the shuttle, blinding the drone's sensors. One drone hit the canyon wall and exploded. The second lost track and flew in the wrong direction. Marcus took the chance and pushed forward. They broke through the canyon and flew into a wide dead zone filled with ancient metal skeletons of war machines. "We're almost there, Marcus," whispered, more to himself than to her, after another hour of silence. The shuttle began to shudder. Fuel was low, and the engine had taken damage. Marcus guided it to a landing spot near the edge of a dead forest. The shuttle hissed and groaned as it landed roughly, but it didn't crash. He exhaled in relief. They had made it at least for now. He picked Laura up and stepped outside. The air was cold, and the sky was covered in thin clouds. Around them stood rusted statues of old alien tanks and fallen towers. Nature had started to reclaim the land. vines growing through broken metal. Marcus led Laura into a cave hidden behind collapsed stone pillars. Inside, it was dry and surprisingly warm. There was even an old alien generator still working. He set down his gear, activated a small heat lamp, and gave Loire a protein bar. She sat beside him, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Safe?" she asked softly, one of the few words she had learned. Marcus smiled and nodded. "For now, yes," he said gently. She handed him her drawing again, pointing to the two figures. Then she pointed to herself and him. Her eyes sparkled with quiet joy. Marcus felt tears rise, but he blinked them away. He couldn't afford to be weak now. Suddenly, the ground vibrated. Marcus stood quickly, hand on his blaster, outside. A sound like metal dragging on rock echoed in the distance. Something else was out there. Not soldiers, not drones, but something worse. Marcus checked the scanner. It wasn't human tech. It was old alien machinery, still active in the dead zone. He looked at Laura, who was watching the cave entrance with wide, alert eyes. She knew this place. She had seen something like this before. She whispered one word in her language, barely audible. He didn't understand it, but he didn't have to. Whatever she had just said, it meant danger. He pulled her close and whispered, "We'll survive this, just like before." Then he pulled out his tools and began setting traps at the entrance. If anything came through, it would have to face a human who had already sacrificed everything. The message she carries the night in the dead zone was heavy. Even the stars above looked distant and cold. Marcus sat by the entrance of the cave, holding a blaster in one hand and a wrench in the other. Beside him, Laura slept under a thin thermal blanket, curled up like a kitten. Her little hands clutched the stuffed animal he had stitched back together weeks ago. He hadn't slept in over 30 hours. Every sound outside made him tighten his grip. Every rustle in the leaves or crack of old metal made his heart beat faster. Something was moving out there, something old, something alien. The scanner beeped softly. Not human, not drone, but something buried. Waking up, Marcus activated one of the motion traps he had set. It gave a soft hiss and lit up with a pale blue pulse. He looked down at Laura, still sleeping peacefully. Unaware of the danger moving around them, he whispered, "I won't let anything hurt you." Suddenly, Laura's eyes opened. She sat up without saying a word, her head turning slowly toward the cave wall. Marcus followed her gaze. But there was nothing there, just solid rock. Then Laura stood up and walked to the back wall. Her hand reached out and touched a strange symbol hidden under the moss. The wall blinked. A hidden door slid open without a sound, revealing a long, dark corridor filled with old lights and dust. Marcus jumped to his feet. "What is this?" he whispered, shocked. Laura looked up at him and said just one word, "Home." She stepped inside the corridor, and Marcus followed her, blaster still in hand. They walked through tunnels that had not been touched for years, maybe decades. The lights above them flickered, turning on one by one as they moved deeper. Symbols lined the walls, alien language unreadable to Marcus, but Laura seemed to understand. At the end of the corridor, they entered a round chamber glowing softly with blue light. In the center was a metallic platform shaped like a flower, with glowing petals folded inward. Laura walked toward it slowly. As if guided by a memory older than her, she placed her hand on the side of the platform, and it unfolded with a soft hum. From the petals rose a glowing crystal, pulsing with energy. The air around it shimmered, and a voice calm and ancient spoke from the walls. Language unknown to Marcus, but Laura's eyes filled with tears. She nodded, then turned to him. She said, "I am last," Laura whispered, struggling with the words in English. Marcus stepped forward, kneeling beside her. "Last of what?" he asked gently. Laura touched her chest. "Memory, blood, hope," she said slowly. "She put everything." In me, Marcus looked at the crystal, realizing what it was. A memory core, a biovault. A living archive hidden in the DNA of a child. His voice trembled. Your people put their entire history in you. Laura nodded, wiping her tears. If I die. All gone, Marcus felt the weight of the truth settle over him like a mountain. She wasn't just a child, she was a living message. The last breath of a dying civilization, suddenly. The scanner on his wrist buzzed again, this time louder. Movement outside the cave. Fast, sharp, and close. Marcus pulled Laura behind him, blaster raised. The screen showed a group of machines enchant alien guardians coming toward the entrance. They protect this place, Laura said softly. They test. Marcus asked, confused, to see if I am ready. She replied, staring at the entrance. She stepped forward, her tiny hand glowing with the same soft blue light as the crystal. The machines stopped at the cave mouth and lowered their weapons. Then they bowed. Marcus watched in awe as one of the machines extended a small device toward Laura. She touched it and it wrapped around her wrist like a bracelet. Guide, she said. It will lead us. He looked at her, this small, scared child who now stood like royalty in front of ancient machines. She was no longer just the little girl crying in the ashes. She was becoming something more, something bigger than both of them. Marcus reached out and took her hand. You don't have to do this alone, he said. Laura looked at him and gave the softest, sweetest smile he had ever seen. Never alone, she whispered. They left the chamber together, the bracelet glowing and pointing toward a new path, not just to safety, but to purpose. Marcus had saved a child, but now he knew he was walking beside the last voice of an entire world, and nothing would stop him from getting her to where she needed to be. One last stand. The bracelet on Laura's wrist glowed brighter with every step they took. It pulsed like a heartbeat, guiding them deeper into the old alien lands. Marcus followed close, blaster on his hip, nerves tight like wires. He didn't know what waited ahead, but he trusted her. They had crossed forests of glass trees, walked over rusted bones of war machines, and passed through valleys where no birds sang. The dead zone was quiet, but not empty. Every shadow felt like a watcher. Every breeze carried whispers of the past. They reached a ridge. And below it, Marcus saw something that made his breath stop. A tall alien structure stood. In the center of a deep crater, glowing rings floated above it, spinning slowly. The last signal beacon of Laura's people. This is it, Marcus asked, looking down at her. Laura nodded, her voice soft. If I reach it, the message goes out to the stars, then maybe someone remembers us. But before they could move closer, the ground shook. Marcus raised his weapon, eyes scanning. Then he saw them, multiple figures dropping from black ships in the sky. Soldiers, human authority units, dressed in dark armor. Armed to the teeth, they followed us, Marcus said through gritted teeth. He grabbed Laura's hand and pulled her behind a broken wall. She didn't cry, didn't panic. She simply looked at the structure ahead, then back at the soldiers. They want to stop me, she said calmly. Yes, Marcus whispered, loading his weapon. But they'll have to go through me first. The soldiers began scanning the area. Weapons ready. Marcus knew this terrain better. He had studied old war maps. He guided Laura through hidden paths, using the ruins for cover. One wrong move, and they would be spotted. One sound, and they would both be taken or worse. They got within 30 meters of the structure. Then a loud voice boomed from a hover speaker. Marcus Hale, stand down. You are harboring a classified alien subject. Lay down your weapon and surrender the child. Marcus looked at Laura, who stood tall beside him now. No, he said, loud enough to be heard. She's not a subject. She's hope. without waiting for a reply. He activated an old alien defense panel built into the ruins. Energy shields crackled around them. Just as the soldiers opened fire, blaster bolts slammed into the glowing walls but couldn't break through. "Stay." "Behind me," Marcus said. Taking position, he returned fire with sharp, focused shots, slowing down the soldiers' advance. But he was only one man, and they were many. Soon the shield began to flicker, losing power. Marcus looked at Laura, his voice shaking. "You have to run. Reach the tower. Send the message." But she didn't move. Instead, she walked forward. Past him, past the failing shield. Her bracelet glowed like a small sun. She raised her hand, and the ground itself responded. Ancient machines hidden under the surface came alive. Pillars rose, energy lines lit up, and ghostly figures of her ancestors appeared in the air. The soldiers paused, confused, unsure, and that hesitation gave Marcus time. He fought with everything he had, grains, traps, hand to hand. He was bleeding, bruised, and exhausted, but he never stopped moving, because behind him, Laura was walking toward the tower, step by step, glowing brighter with each footfall. A soldier raised his weapon to shoot her. Marcus saw its hand without thinking, jumped in front. The shot hit him in the side. He fell hard, pain exploding in his body, but he didn't let go of his weapon. Laura turned, her eyes wide with shock. She ran to him, kneeling beside him. He smiled weakly, blood on his lips. "You're almost there," he whispered. "Go." Tears rolled down her cheeks, glowing like crystal drops. She stood again, but something inside her had changed. The lights on the tower responded to her pain. She raised her hands, hand from her body burst a wave of pure energy. The soldiers were thrown back, weapons shorting out, ships crashing to the ground. No one died, but everything stopped. Silence returned. Only the soft humming of the tower remained. Laura climbed the final steps. Her tiny hands touching the central panel, the structure came to life, sending out a pulse to the stars, a message carried in light and sound, in memory and DNA, a signal from the last child of a forgotten race. "Remember us?" it said. "We were here." She turned back, ran down to where Marcus lay. He was still breathing, but barely. Her hands glowed again, not with light, but with life. She pressed them to his wound. The energy moved from her to him. Healing, mending, saving. He opened his eyes, weak but smiling. "You did it," he whispered. She nodded, her voice trembling. "We did it." And in that moment, with fire behind them and stars above them, she was no longer just a rescued child. And he was no longer just a lonely human. They were something new, something stronger. Together, they had changed everything. She's not alone anymore. The stars above were brighter now. The old alien tower pulsed gently in the background. No longer a silent ruin, but a living beacon. Its light reached across the sky, across systems, carrying the story of a lost people. And at the center of that story stood a little girl with glowing red eyes, and a human man whose clothes were stained with blood and dust. Marcus sat against a stone, breathing slowly. The pain in his side had faded. Laura's healing touch had done something he still didn't understand. Not just closed wounds, but revived him with a warmth deeper than medicine. Laura sat beside him, her tiny hand still gripping his. She didn't speak, but her eyes said everything. She was safe now, and so was he. The soldiers who had tried to take her lay scattered across the field. Not dead, but stunned. Machines once buried under the surface stood silently watching. Guardians. No longer asleep, they had accepted her, followed her command, and obeyed her protection. For the first time in her life, Laura was not afraid. She didn't have to hide. She didn't have to run. More lights appeared in the night sky ships, but not military, not invaders. Alien crafts of different shapes and sizes answered the signal. Old allies, scattered races, and curious explorers, drawn by the ancient call, Marcus. Watched them land, watched strange beings step out in silence, their eyes wide as they looked at the little girl glowing softly beside him. They bowed not in fear, but in deep respect. An elder with silver scales and 6 fingers approached first. He knelt in front of Lura and spoke in a gentle alien tongue. She replied softly, and the elder's face turned to joy she carries. Their memory, the elder said to Marcus in broken English, "She is the last seed and the first flower." Marcus didn't understand every word, but he nodded. "She's my daughter," he said simply. The elder smiled. "Then she is ours too, soon." The field turned into something more. Not a battlefield, but a gathering. Tents were raised. Food was shared, and broken weapons were dropped to the ground like useless things. Peace had begun not through treaties, but through a single bond. Laura stayed close to Marcus. But she was no longer hiding behind him. She walked among the visitors. With quiet pride, children from other species followed her curiously. She showed them the drawing. She still carried the one of her and Marcus under the stars. They laughed, and she laughed with them. Marcus repaired the shuttle using parts gifted by alien engineers. He no longer needed to run, but he still worked. Because it gave him peace. One day, as he tightened a bolt, Lura ran to him with a flower in her hand, glowing blue like her eyes. "For you," she said, pressing it into his palm. Marcus smiled. Placing it gently in a glass tube, "I'll keep it forever," he said. Months passed. The human authority, embarrassed by their failure to stop him, stayed quiet. News of what happened slowly leaked into the public. Whispers spread. A human man had protected a forgotten alien child, and that child had awakened a message that stopped a war. Some called him a traitor, but most called him something else. A hero, a father, a symbol of what humanity could be when it remembered its heart. One night, Lura climbed onto Marcus's lap and looked up at the stars. "Where do we go now, Papa?" she asked softly. Marcus looked at the glowing tower. "The peaceful camp, the distant stars. Anywhere you want," he replied, brushing her hair gently. She leaned her head on his chest. "Not alone?" she asked. Marcus smiled. "Never alone." And as they sat there, surrounded by beings from every corner of space, a girl once abandoned, and a man once alone, they had found something stronger than blood or war. They had found family. Their story became legend, not because of power, but because of love. And long after towers faded and ships rusted, one story was told again and again, across stars and planets, of a man who heard a cry in the ashes, and of the child who made the universe. Listen, she was not alone. She never would be again. The end.